Welcome everyone to Comics from the Multiverse, episode 371. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Matt.
Hey, what's up?
It's a DC Comics podcast. We get together and talk about the books we read this week, and it is a dreaded week 5, so expect a weird list of books. We have this week in Night Terror, Night's End, issue 1. We have Batman, Catwoman, The Gotham War, Battle Lines, issue 1, or at least I read that.
Yeah, I dodged a bullet.
We have Action
Maybe.
Comics presents the Doomsday Special issue 1. Matt went back and caught up on Tales of the Titans Raven issue 1 from a couple of weeks ago. And then I got a Patreon book this week. I've got the first half of American Vampire Anthology issue 1, which bonus for the patron because Matt also decided to read that.
Yep.
So you'll get two of us talking about that book. So that is what's coming up on the show today. It is a week 5, which means less books, but they're all like annual-sized books. So it's a weird week. I never like a week 5. I just feel like the routine's off, you know? Like
For sure. This feels like extra stuff, you know? Like Night Terrors. I know that's the end of the event, but it's essentially like, what, an issue 7?
Yeah. I mean, that is the silver lining here, though, is that it's over.
Yep.
It's done. We get to say goodbye to Night Terrors finally. We get back to regular books next week, which is delightful news. So it's not all bad, but certainly a weird week, as these week 5s always are. But don't worry, even in a weird week 5, there is one part of the clock, one part of the cycle that forever spins, that forever will be there.
This is my own personal nightmare stone.
And it is, of course, the ComiXology Top 10, everyone! That's what we're going to start off with. We're looking at the current ranking of comics on ComiXology. They're ranked in order of sold. They're split with Tuesday and Wednesday, so we'll look at Tuesday first since that's the DC books, and then we'll have a glance at Wednesday as well, just to see how the rest of the industry is faring. Matt, you got a guess for number 1 for Tuesday's books?
I'm gonna go against better judgment and say Gotham War, Batman, Catwoman.
It is.
Oh, wow.
I mean, to be fair, there was only 3 real contenders, and I feel like most people, well, not most, but certainly enough people probably have decided to hate Night Terrors that it makes sense that that's not number 1.
They did not care how it ended.
No. That is number 2, though, is Night Terrors, Night's End. Number 3 is the Doomsday Special, which is the exact, I mean, it was always going to be those 3 in the first 3 slots.
Yeah.
And then we have Nort's Illustrated Swimsuit Special at number 4. Number 5 is The Riddler Year 1. Number 6 is Sandman Universe Nightmare Country. And there's more title to that I can't even read because it's too long. And then we have
The Glass House, number 4.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then we have something called Den Volume 1 Neverwhere by Richard Corbin and Patton Oswalt.
What is this? It's from DC?
No. There's so few books on this Tuesday that some
Tuesday
non-DC books have sprinkled in. So I would guess a graphic novel, but let's have a think. First volume presenting the long.
What's the publisher?
Out of print. Oh, let me see. Where is it? Publisher's Dark Horse.
Oh, good for them.
Yeah, this is a long out of print masterpiece. Interesting. So this is a collection of an old comic then that's just doing that well.
Yes. So on Lego Comic Geeks, only when I click over, it's Star Wars Hyperspace Stories number 8 and Black Hammer The End. So that's all that came up on my end.
Well, I imagine this is a trade or collection, meaning that it won't be the same as the direct comic market, I guess. This might be just when it released to the publisher or to the stores. Regardless, it's here in the ComiXology Top 10.
Yeah.
Number 8 is Catwoman Uncovered, which is just a collection of covers, so that tells you how much we're scraping the barrel. And then the Star Wars The High Republic collection, and then number 10 is the EC Archives Weird Science, another collection there. So yeah, it's just basically a trade. So week 5 at DC, there's just not enough to fill out a top 10.
No.
So you got that, and then if you look at Wednesday, now Marvel tend to be a lot more just loosey-goosey with their scheduling, so they don't tend to have week 5s like DC do. it'll just be a smattering of whatever books are ready for that week. So, you got a guess as for what number?
I'm
number
looking
was?
for an X book. I'm not seeing one, so I'm just gonna go with what sounds like more of an event. I'm gonna say Ultimate Invasion number 3.
That is correct. I did not think you were going to get that.
Yeah, I had to double check to make sure there wasn't any hidden X books.
I mean, there's a Wolverine book. I thought you might guess that.
Yeah, no, but I'm looking for, any of these big, sounding, what's the word I'm looking for? When something feels like it's a bigger deal than it is. Pretentious, I guess. I was looking for a big, pretentious title. The whole House of X type stuff. So, Ultimate Invasion. They're actually pulling through with that, huh?
I guess. I don't know. I have really not been paying attention to what Marvel events are going on right now. Number 2 is Miss Marvel, the New Mutant. Issue 1. So, yeah, this is them finally mutantizing Miss Marvel. Kamala Khan.
Part of me feels bad for Charles Soule. I know he didn't create the character, but the whole idea of the Inhumans, like, Marvel really bought into the idea that the Inhumans are going to be the next mutants, right? So making her an Inhuman and now going back and retconning that is it's kind of funny to me. It makes me feel bad for the Inhumans as a property.
Oh yeah, them retconning Kamala to be a mutant instead of an Inhuman is the death knell in any like respect that that company shows the Inhumans. Like there was a belief at one point, and let's be honest, it's because they didn't have the movie rights to X-Men and they had Inhumans, so they were trying to push Inhumans. But now that they've got the X-Men, and now that Inhumans in general as an idea mostly has flopped, it's like no, she's a mutant now. She was always a mutant. Forget it. Don't worry about it. Yeah.
Now I wonder if they adjusted her powers too to match more of the TV show / movie than just the stretchiness.
I don't know.
So
no idea.
If you do know, hit us up. Well, hit me up anyways.
Number 3 is Marvel Age issue 1000. I suspect that's not a real issue 1000. I think they're being cheeky with that number. Number 4 is Wolverine issue 36. These blades are on fire, but it looks of it, so that's nice for him. Number 5 is Incredible Hulk issue 3, and that's Philip Kennedy Johnson's run, so I'm a little curious about that. Number 6 is Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Number 7 is Moon Knight Annual. Number 8 is Blade issue 2. And then number 9 is Conan the Barbarian. And number 10 is World Tree issue 5, and that's a James Tynion the 4th book. So a couple, we got Power Rangers and Indy and Conan. Maybe Conan still counts as a... No, because that's Marvel now, isn't it?
This Conan book is listed at Titan.
Was it Titan?
So,
fair enough.
Yeah.
Marvel did do a Conan book at one point, though, didn't they?
They did, because it was Jason Aaron, and I read part of it. But yeah.
Yeah. Is that a vacuum cleaner we're hearing?
Yeah, I'm gonna yell. Let me hold on.
Mute the mic. Yeah, there you go. Just hearing this slight high pitched whirl, and I'm like, what is that? What is that? It's a vacuum. Oh, he's getting up. Oh, this is. Oh, he's always shutting the door. All right, it's a whole process. How have I talked enough not to have to go back and edit this? I think so. Welcome back, Matt.
There we go.
And I guess that'll do the ComiXology top 10. I have nothing to add. So, very good. Not much news this week. A couple of little... Well, this one's not little, I suppose, but because we do have to, unfortunately, say goodbye to someone. Arlene Sorkin, the original voice of Harley Quinn, passed away. So this is some sad news. Only 67 years old.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a shame, and obviously with Kevin Conroy already passing away, it does kind of, it does feel like, I feel like my childhood, particularly like the stuff I liked in the 90s, is kind of hitting a lot of bad news these days. So the Green Ranger wasn't that long ago. Yeah,
the Green Ranger. So put Mark Hamill in Bubble Wrap, please.
Oh yeah. Yeah, this is rough to hear. So not much to add really. Just obviously.
I mean, she definitely every person that's done Harley since, has to try to write in that voice because it's so ubiquitous. There's a certain pacing. Even on the Harley animated show, there's a bit of her in Kaylee Cuoco's delivery. because I feel like that's just in the DNA of Harley. So yeah, it's a big time bummer.
Yeah. Yeah, she like obviously it was a new character, so maybe it's easier to leave your stamp.
Yeah.
But yeah, like those elements of that character performance that have just been there. It's kind of like how in wrestling, like Howard Finkel always emphasized the "and you" when he was announcing the winner of the title match, and how every announcer since then has emulated that exact thing. He just made that like a thing you have to do. And with Harley Quinn, it feels like there's certain things about her delivery that just, at least in animated form, they've always adhered to. Admittedly, it is a little bit harder in live action to constantly have that type of voice, but yeah. So,
but I feel like Margot Robbie did kind of she added her flavor onto it in her 3 appearances as Harley. So, but yeah, no. So like you're saying, it is the kind of childhood stuff, because you brought up the Green Ranger and all these different 90s people now. It's I don't like that it's making me feel my age.
It's making me feel old for sure. And then this is less news per se, but I know David Ayer's been talking a lot about
oh no,
his Suicide Squad, and he did an interview this past week talking about the movie was a breaking point for him in Hollywood. He said, and I quote, "Hollywood, I tell people, is like watching someone you love get effed by someone you hate." The theatrical cut that got released was, butchered effectively. Which, to be fair, like, it feels butchered when you watch it.
It does, but like that movie, I don't know, man. I don't know how much bigger of a print that could have saved that movie.
No, because the reason why I even put this in is because I know just like a couple of weeks ago as well, he put out like a photo of the original concept he had for Joker, but he still had a tattoo on his forehead. It said something different, but it was still the same thing.
Yeah, it's still this edginess, and like I appreciate some of his, he did do, Training Day? Was that his first thing?
He didn't direct that, I don't think. No,
but he wrote that, and so I understand him wanting to bring an urban kind of toughness vibe to the Joker, but I just don't feel like that's Joker. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I understand what he was trying to do, but I don't think what he was trying to do was correct for the character, regardless. So yeah, man. The less about that, the better. Right? People were talking about the Ayer cut, and I was like, I haven't had a chance to see Blue Beetle yet. Despite hearing things from people that I trust, that it's a fun time. The Flash is currently sitting on Max, and I'm dreading watching that because I'm going to eventually. But yeah.
I don't know if I am, honestly.
Yeah.
I
hope you stick through that.
Because I thought I'd end up hate watching it as a stream at some point, but even my stream audience were like, we don't really want to.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, well, in that case, I don't really care then either.
Yeah. So, just one of those things. Man, it's just DC movie fan right now. It's kind of rough times. At least we have the Batman.
Yeah, I think it's probably not unlikely that at some point I will watch it for some type of content, but there's no plans right now.
Yeah.
And if I ever do it, it'll be purely for the sake of the entertainment value of me complaining about it afterwards. Yeah,
I have a hard time every time I go to click on it and there's the actor that's playing the Flash looking back at me, and it doesn't make me feel good knowing how much of a dirtbag he is. So yeah. If it was just one of these things like it's kind of an afterthought movie, I thought through Shazam too. I thought it was okay. I'll sit through The Flash if it was literally any other actor. So that's a bummer.
Oh well. Okay. Well, let's not depress everyone too much.
No, not too depressed. I just wanted to point out too that this week marked the 12th year anniversary of the New 52.
Whoa.
Yeah, don't like knowing that because it does not feel like it was 12 years ago.
Talk about feeling old.
Yeah, buddy. A post came across my Facebook memories, and it was Flashpoint 6 or 7, I forget which issue, and then Justice League 1. They came out on the same day, and it was from 12 years ago. So, oh man, just wild times.
That's kind of nuts. Which also means that Rebirth was 7 years ago in May, which is also insane.
Yep.
Yep. People said this show wouldn't last.
Yeah, one of those people were me. I took the wrong bet.
Here we are, 2023, struggling on. All right, well, let's get into the comics then. We'll start off with Knight's Terror, Knight's Send, issue 1, Joshua Williamson, and I believe 4 different artists on this particular book. So, yep, that's the thing. Right, so, full confession, I did read this, but don't worry, I didn't check it out. Yeah. But I read this as I was lying in bed, and I was kind of in that...
no.
I read this in a state where I was really tired but couldn't sleep, but I was getting sleepy as I was reading it. So we'll see how much of this I remember as we go through.
Insomnia really was attacking you in your sleep.
Yes. This opening scene with the family coming in and talking to the little girl about her nightmares. That she's having nightmares of the superheroes.
Yeah. There's parts of that I don't like. That one I don't mind. I just wish it didn't do like the formulaic type thing, right? Oh, monsters aren't real, and then monsters, kick in the door. Like, I don't know. I just wish Williamson wouldn't just always take the low-hanging fruit, I guess.
I mean, I don't. This bookend with this family and the little girl being scared of the superheroes and the parents writing it off as monsters, but then realizing that they all have this shared connection of insomnia being in all their dreams. That's fine enough, and the fact that it comes back to at the end and it's like insomnia won because enough people are starting to like, it's convinced enough people that they are a little bit scared of the Justice League and they're scared of people with superpowers, and that because he's planted that fear, he kind of won. And I like that conceptually. I think this book does not earn that ending at all. They just sort of say it at the end, and I'm like, wait, but literally all we've had is this one family, and we've had no idea. Like, did we not get to see like what he was showing? Like, show us what they're seeing. Show us like the bad things the heroes are doing. Right.
Exactly. Instead of just making it, this catch-all because of the, infinite crises, right, that have happened. Because that's what I feel like it's pulling from. It's pulling from our collective knowledge of all the stuff that must have happened in the DC universe over and over again. So again, yeah, conceptually, like you said, but a lot like Williamson stuff, the execution's just not there.
Yeah, and this issue is mostly just a big fight issue, let's be honest. Yeah. Like, it's a lot of fighting with a lot of very back and forth different art styles. A lot of the art I do not like. Yeah. I think that's fair to say. A good bit of it revolves around Deadman, where Insomnia tries to give him a fake family as a reward for like helping him find the Nightmare Stone. But of course, the others are trying to talk Deadman out of it. Oh my god, there's so I'm on a page. I don't even know how to describe the page, so you know which one I'm on. It's page 13, apparently, according to my thing. But so the middle of the page is like I think that's Zatanna who's swiping a sword, but it sort of created kind of like a disc around Batman and Wonder Woman, right? The panel underneath that, where Superman's standing in the foreground, that is one of the worst panels I have seen in the comic book in quite some time.
Superman's hair looks like it's eating his head.
I mean, obviously Superman's body looks horrendous, but look at Wonder Woman behind him. Look at like she's got a squiggle on her face, and that's it. That's all the detail you get.
I wonder who the artist on that one is, because that's the same art style. It almost looks like really messy Howard Porter. Like it was Howard Porter in a rush.
Yeah, it's not Howard Porter though. I don't think on this book.
Yeah. No, I think it is.
Is it? Is Howard Porter listed in the? Oh, yes. Okay.
Howard Porter is one of the names, so I'm wondering if that is him.
It probably is him then. Yeah. I mean, the art style in general looks kind of Howard Porter, but it does feel very rushed. It feels like time was of the essence, and he just had to. And he had to draw. This is a lot of characters on all these fighting pages, so he's
then
really.
You go to the next page, which is a double page spread, and it's a little bit more clean, but I mean, definitely abstract,
Yeah, so obviously they're able to sort of snap Deadman out of it, and Deadman eventually kind of pops out. And Joe, what gets me is that, so we've had all these tie-ins, and like there's one moment where it's like Zatanna and Robot Man, are together in a couple panels, and like, hey, Zatanna, it's our old friends, the Sleepless Nights. It's like, yeah, I hate these guys, or I hate magic. And I'm like, that entire backup was just a build-up for 3 panels where they acknowledge that they've spent time together. That's it. Yep. That's all that tied into.
How much of a big deal that what was it, issue 2 or 3 made of the Sleepless Nights, and they were really a non-factor.
In fact, I barely see them in this comic.
Yeah.
They're probably in some of the big splash pages, but I feel like they're hardly there.
Like, they're these characters they try to build up that we don't even know their names.
We're not even spending time on fighting them, never mind like actually developing characters out of them.
Right. So, although I do like, Dead Man sitting down with the family and being like, oh, this is lovely, but this isn't like what I want. This is not my dream. This is Insomnia's. This is what he wants. So I do like Boston putting that together, and then Insomnia trying to play on Boston's loneliness.
It's a conceptual thing, it's an execution thing that I think here, because that sounds fine, but then it turns into Insomnia ripping Deadman apart as if he's somehow destroying him, and then like a few pages later, once Sandman's got the Dream Stone to try and combat the Nightmare Stone and all that, Deadman just shows up and is like, oh, that was an act, you destroying me. I used to play dead as part of my show. This just feels more like, this is more of Williamson's just kind of writing himself into corners and then writing himself out of corners in something that doesn't, like, I don't even know why we had to do this bit where he looked like he was destroyed. Like, why not just have him come out, like, have him be with the family like he's being tricked, like he's accepting the offer, and then have the big moment where he like breaks free of that be this moment where he comes out and helps save the day. And the only answer I've got is that they needed like another 6 pages in between them to fill with stuff. So let's make it look like he kills him, and then he comes back and is like, no, I was just faking it. But how could we know you were faking it? You literally shattered into pieces like you were glass. Like, that's just, it's disingenuous to the reader because it's nothing that we can immediately accept as or understand how he faked it or how it worked. At least when someone seems dead and it's a good twist that they're actually still alive. And the rare case where that happens, it tends to work because you immediately understand how they pulled it off, right? They'll give you one detail and it'll all just click. You're like, oh, okay, they slowed the heart rate down for this thing, or they tricked us because this sensor was only there for temperature and he had like thermal clothes on or something. I don't know, whatever it may be. Like this.
As you were just doing your justification of things, I just checked, and from the time that he rips him, right?
Yeah.
That whole section, it's 10 pages worth of stuff, because it's 4 where him and Deadman get into the fight, and then it's 6 until the time that he comes back.
Yes, and of course, this is all just so we can actually seemingly kill Deadman a few pages later after that, because he sacrifices himself. Taking care of Insomnia, get into like a bright white light. It's a whole big thing. I mean, Sandman tries to talk him out of it, but but he makes a sacrifice. He finally gets his death that he's been wanting, and it's a whole thing. And Insomnia like has these visions of his family. Basically, he's in his own private hell with his family on fire, and they're like dragging him like they're zombies. But Deadman's gone though, so Deadman seemingly for now has ceased to exist with his sacrifice, which is fine, I guess, but he's going to come back because they always do, and it just kind of feels that we spent all this time building him up just to kill him at the end of it, I guess. I don't know.
Or to see where his next adventures, where's he going to pop up next, because they do make a big deal of him saying his deal with Ramakrishna was done lifetimes ago, that he's tired of being the audience, he wants to take more of a hands-on. So it wouldn't surprise me if we get some type of mini-series at least, the further adventures of Deadman, where because we'll talk about it in the Doomsday special, but like this whole idea of good and evil and what that represents, the God figures, like Big G God and the devil, what that represents in DC, and what the life is. So I could almost see like Dead Man here, this being like he's paid his penance now, and he gets to, you know, have the peace that he wants. And if that peace is him being able to go out on adventures and not be tied to, you know, possessing people or whatever, you know, I could see that fully being that doorway.
Wesley Dawes goes back to his grave, and talk about the art change being drastic when you go to that page and it's all these very flat, clean. Like, I mean, the art's good on that page, but like shifting from the very kind of messy Howard Porter looking stuff in the previous page is quite a jolt. And then Batman collapses. Apparently, having Dead Man in him for so long, piloting him, is taking a lot out of him. And this leads straight into the Batman Catwoman book, because it starts off with him still asleep from this.
Oh, okay.
So I'll leave that for more discussion, I suppose. And Superman and Wonder Woman shut down the Hall of Justice, and they talk about how Insomnia kinda won because that little girl at the start is throwing away her superhero drawings because she's scared of them. And the book ends.
Kids are fickle, though. She'll be back.
Sure. The book ends with a tease for the next event, which is Beast World. Amanda Waller is working with someone. She's actually quite happy what Insomnia did because she likes that everyone hates the superheroes. And we have someone whose identity is unknown. In fact, they specifically say they can never know who I am, so let the speculation begin. But he's giving the Helmet of Hate and the Nightmare Stone, and he becomes Dr. Hate. And
I'm Dr. Hate because I hate this.
He's working with Amanda Waller, and this is going to be part of Beast World. I was looking forward to Beast World. I don't really like the concept of Dr. Hate, but we'll see what Taylor and co do with it, because we've got better people involved with that.
Like, the idea of there being an evil Dr. Fate, right? I get, but again, this is the Dreamstone to the Nightmare Stone type stuff. And again, someone swiped the Nightmare Stone. It's got to be one of our characters, right? That was there. However, knowing what we know about this Beast World stuff and the stuff that we're setting up with Tempest as Aqualad and stuff, I wouldn't be surprised if he's the traitor here. From some of the stuff that we've seen with you know, in the Titans book. So
is he big enough though for this? Like, this feels like a bigger reveal, whoever this is going to be.
It does, but I don't know.
Does anyone care if the mask comes off and it's Tempest? Oh no, it's the first Aqualad. Like, we're all chaos.
Probably not. But I was just trying to go off of the story beats that Tom Taylor's given us.
That's fair. That's fair. It does. But yeah, it specifically says that Waller wants to go after the Titans because the Justice League has been dealt with effectively. So
yeah. Well, she's gonna have a hard time because the Titans are more of a family than the Justice League is, right? Like, yeah,
they're more bonded.
Yeah, you can divide and conquer the Justice League, as we've seen numerous times. The Titans are a little bit more. Talk to Slade.
I think what you said there though is right. This Dr. Hate, it feels, first of all, he looks kind of goofy and really overly 90s, but it does feel like the Nightmare Stone to the Dreamstone. It feels like, because it can be done well, and the good example of it is when Johns took the Green Lantern and said, let's have the spectrum of light, and the idea that each of the 7 colors that make up white light all have a different thing associated with them, and obviously that expanded Green Lantern immensely, and that felt like a really smart trick. I feel like this is the really dumbed down version of it, is that we have the good version of a thing, let's have the very bad version of the thing, and it can work. There's obviously Reverse Flash as a character works absolutely, but
right. But we're looking at that with the hindsight of it, and it's just like, knowing what I know about Dr. Fate and the Helm of Naboo and the Lords of Order, Lords of Chaos, it's just not as simple as to take something called the Helm of Hate and to combine it with the mind and to give us what looks like Dr. Fate. Like, you know what I mean? Like, try to change up the design just a little bit. You know? Yeah,
I would say make him look different, and I think honestly the biggest problem here is that he's called Dr. Hate. See if they just called him something else, and then it was revealed through story beats. No, this is literally the opposite of the Helmet of Fate. This guy's an evil Dr. Fate. I think that would work. I think calling him Dr. Hate makes it sound really cheap and cheesy and gimmicky, and
Well, it was that if Johns, instead of calling it the Sinestro Corps, he just called it the Yellow Lantern Corps. You know, there's a bit more creativity that Sinestro named it after himself, right? Being the, dictatorial type brain that he has. So I don't know. I got to this page and like I don't even hate the design. I just wish that it didn't look just like evil Dr. Fate. You know, like the purple and the reds and the grays and stuff, that all looks, you know, like a bad guy. But you get up to the helm and I'm just like, all right, this is a little bit too spot on. So and just with Waller, man, I get it. Waller's got her hands in everything. Why? I'm starting to get to the point where I want to know why. What is she doing? What is she paving the way for? You know?
I think she just generally always has this like drive, and we're never going to get to the point where she pulls off whatever she's trying to do, or if they ever do, it'll be a major event because Waller finally gets her way, and that'll be a story arc.
Right. I understood her in the pages of Checkmate when Rucka was writing her, where this is her job, is just to sow chaos, right? When you start involving her into all of the superhero-y affairs, and she's trying to destroy the Justice League and undermine them and all this other stuff, I just have to wonder, it doesn't seem to be working to get her what she wants, because she's not Lex Luthor, she's not a megalomaniac that she wants control over everything. She just wants to call shots. So
I think the problem is when they write her like this, it does feel like she has that though.
Yeah, I know. So it just doesn't feel, because even in, we talked about it in Dark Knights of Steel last, where, you know, it feels like Waller's going to be the big bad through there, and we know that I understand her point of view if that book continues after 12, why she stands against this league that is formed. So here I just feel like she's doing villain things.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I feel like this idea of her being an evil Nick Fury is always kind of the vibe that DC have went for, which is that she hates the superheroes. She can see them as being useful, which is why the Suicide Squad exists, but it's all about control and all these other things. I think it's one of those. I've heard this, the Flanderization of a character where they start off with a few notable quirks and stuff, but then eventually those quirks become just what the character is rather than anything else, so they're just there to do their thing. It kind of feels like that with Amanda Waller, where she was a bit more nuanced as a character. She was, I wouldn't say she was like super realistic necessarily, and I've never read those original Suicide Squad books to see exactly what she was like back in the day, but even just from that post-crisis time period that we were kind of reading originally with, it does feel like she's just turned more and more into the two-dimensional, I hate superheroes, I want to control everything, and I'll do anything. I'll work with any bad guy to achieve that goal. It feels like she's just pivoted a little bit more and more towards that gradually as time has went on, to the point where that's all she is. She's just comically villainous, basically, at this point. Yeah. And that's a shame.
Well, this is the second Williamson event that has ended with Amanda Waller being, okay, the next part of the plan. And I'm just bored with the tediousness of it. Because I want to know what Waller's plan is, but I don't know. It's execution. Conceptually, I like it. Execution-wise, it needs some work.
All right. Well, in that case, actually, I should probably list where the artists were on that book since there was so bloody many.
Well, we do know one of them was Howard Porter, and I think Cami Coley was another.
Oh,
Gesundheit.
Pardon me. The four artists in the book were Giuseppe Camuncoli, Trevor Hairsign was in there, Howard Porter, and Stefano Nisi. Nisi and Camuncoli have been two of the artists that have been on the book, the main Night Terrors book. I think Hairsign and Porter are both new for this final issue.
I think the only Hairsign art I saw was the stuff that was reminiscent of Deceased with Insomnia, when his family attacks him and everything's on fire. But I think that was meant to, make us think of Deceased, with the whole zombification of things. So, but yeah, man, not Porter's best work. And I usually like Howard Porter for the most part. He worked with Williamson a lot on Flash, so.
Yeah, I think it is just a case of it being rushed. Some of those, there was clear, this page is important, I'm going to put a lot of effort into this page, and then this page of small panels, I'm just going to have to rush. Yeah.
I'm going to draw one of them as a squiggle.
All right. What are you rating that?
This is a 5 out of 10.
Yeah, I agree with that. 5 out of 10. It's, I've read worse, but it's a lot of fluff, and there's frustrating elements to it. There's not a whole lot to outright recommend. All right. Batman Catwoman, the Gotham More Battle Lines issue 1. See when you've got 2 colons in your title, you're and a forward slash as well, for that matter. Maybe too much of a title, is all I'll say. But anyway, this is Chip Zdarsky and Tini Howard writing with Mike Hawthorne on the art. So yeah, so I wasn't obviously excited for this, needless to say, and to be honest, there was a chance I might have skipped it, but because it was on a week 5 and there was only a couple other books, I thought, well, I should read, let's see what's happening. So the premise is, it's actually, it's kind of similar to what we were saying about Williamson. Conceptually, I see a lot of good here, but execution is, whatever. And I'm not super into Hawthorne's art. I do think it's a little bit simplistic in places. I'm not a fan of his mouths or in general his faces. So it is very clean. It's not like Howard Porter where it's really messy looking. It's a very clean style, but it's just the proportions and the way that the faces look just are not for me at all. So the premise of this, right? So Batman wakes up. It turns out he's been asleep for 8 weeks. After he fell asleep at the end of night.
Good Lord,
terrace.
that's a good nap.
It's a good nap, right?
It's a good nap. Nothing
physical wrong with him. It's just being piloted by Dead Man made him that tired, and he wakes up. Oracle fills him in a little bit. He's got a little sort of like dream where he's looking at Zuenar in his head, and he's like, "Hey, is it time for me to take over?" And he's like, "No, you get back in your cage, purple red Batman. I'm getting up." So
get back in your box.
So he wakes up and he immediately goes over to his bat suit. Well, time to parole, stretch the legs to get things going. Also, they acknowledge that he's missing a hand here because he's got his like robot hand. And Oracle's like, "Hey, when we were examining your body, we noticed you had a mech hand here. Do I explain that?" He's like, "It's nothing. I'm fine." Is basically his response.
I forgot about that too because of Night Terrors.
Yeah, I hate that he Zdarsky's done this, so now we have to deal with a stupid metal hand. Like, or eventually he'll get like a flesh-looking hand that's robotic, and then we'll just forget that it ever was a thing.
Or pretty soon we'll have a clone thrown into a Lazarus pit, and the brain's been transferred over.
It's just the whole pain. So Batman goes patrolling. He sees a skylight open at a museum or whatever, and there's these 2 burglars in there, and they're cutting the glass, classic stuff. Batman chases them. And they end up getting away, but it turns out they got away through a vent, meaning the skylight being open with the cable was actually like a decoy. They actually tricked them, and it's like, oh, that's interesting. And then the premise of the book is that Catwoman is going around and recruiting all of the goons who normally work for Riddler, Penguin, Joker, whoever, right? She's basically making deals with them all, and she's training them. She's training them to be cat burglars, and the idea that, from her perspective, is that she is going to train them all to only steal from the rich, never kill anyone, never hurt anyone, and only take it from people who will basically not miss whatever has been taken. And we find out in the eight weeks that Batman's been asleep, crime has went down 75% because Catwoman has been doing this.
God. Okay.
Right, this is all fit, and she's got like a whole like sort of gem. She's training all these criminals. We got this lady Clayface looking chick who was in the Catwoman book before, and she's like, okay, I've heard Batman's awake, I'm going to have to call a meeting with them. Tim Drake's taking on Maxi Zeus at a power plant. Batman shows up and Tim hugs him and he's like, Batman, I miss you. And he's like, I miss you too, son. And there's a whole like the dialogue's just a little off. Like there's something about Zdarsky's Batman dialogue which is just slightly left of correct. It's just something I don't like about it. I think it's just like they talk just a little bit too cheesy, I guess, for my liking. But yeah, Selina calls this meeting, quote unquote, masks off. So the Bat family show up, right? Batman doesn't take his mask off, but everyone else shows up to her club that she took from the Penguins kids. Duke's there. I think that's Cass in the background, but the art's quite simplistic here. Steph's there, Damien's there, Babs and Dick are all there. Oh, and Kate's there too. Batwoman's there. I will point out the art here that Damien looks like he's 17 in this page. And it's just kind of weird because he's still been drawn like he's a 13-year-old in every other book.
Yeah.
You know? So it just stuck out to me. I was like, wait, is that Tim? And I'm like, no, it's Damien's suit. That's just Damien.
You gotta get him like he is kind of further away from John's age than he has been, but still, I don't know. If John's not around, like, who's looking? But yeah, if he looks too much like just Tim and Damien's costume, that's a problem.
Yeah. So Selena shows up and basically says, look, this is what I've been doing. Crime's down, and it's actually working, right? All I'm asking you guys to do is to leave us be. Don't, like, go after the guys doing the cat burglaries. They're not going to hurt anyone. I'm training them the right way. And of course, Batman's scowling. He hates this. And the part of the concept here that I think is actually quite interesting is, like, how the different members of the Bat family kind of react to this. And I like the idea of them debating on, like, the pros and cons of this, because, like, Dick's like, this doesn't feel right. All you've really done is change the crime. Like, the crime's still there. You're just kind of, like, shifted it. But then, Tim's like, yeah, but there's a difference between, a thug shooting a bodega owner versus, just stealing a jewel from a rich person who's like, oh, he'll be annoyed about it, but then, well, I'll buy another 10 jewels. Like, who cares?
Yeah.
Right? So Duke kind of has that thought. Kate's kind of on board. Damien hates it. Damien's like, no, this is bullshit. They're criminals.
Yeah, he deals in absolutes, for sure.
And to be fair, Damien's also got a good point, though. He says, but what if they eventually just go back to, like, Joker and Penguin and Riddler, but you've trained them all to, like, be much better at their job?
I mean, that is kind of Catwoman's thing, though, right? Is that, that's what she kind of wants. Because if she's shifting the crime, Dick pointed out, you're just shifting the crime. Like, it's not violent crime now, but it's still crime. And now, there's no way Two-Face and Joker are going to be okay with this.
No. And apparently they've been quite quiet during all this because they can't. There's no goons to hire. I do love the idea, and this was something the very short-lived TV show called Powerless had, where they had this app in that where, like, people would sign up to be goons, and there was a guy on there who was an ex-Riddler goon. I love the idea of delving into the weird meta mythology of Gotham, where there's all these goons who actually kind of move around the different, like, masked villains for work, depending on who's, like, out of Arkham and who's hiring. That is quite funny to me to get into that. But hey, so Tim's like, okay, you know what, it doesn't feel right, but, we could use more data. We could sort of analyze this a bit more and see what's going on. And then there's the page. There's the page that everyone is going to make fun of, and rightly so, to be honest. Selena's still arguing her point. She says, if you attack my people, all you're doing is increasing the kinds of crime you're trying to stop, right? You're just increasing the chances that there's going to be more violence. The violent ones, we're just allowing the rich to be robbed. They can afford it. Hell, half of them never earned their ludicrous wealth. They can give up some for. And this is where Batman jumps in and yells, my parents were rich! And I'm not going to lie, it was giving me serious my parents are dead. Like, that classic panel. It was giving me those vibes. He doesn't slap anyone when he says it, but that was the feeling I got when I read this. It felt really weird. This is what's so sad about the execution of this, is that conceptually, this idea that, like, Selena is basically operating in a slight shade of grey. She's giving the crime world a bit of leeway to be better, and it's working. It's showing results. And I love the idea of the Bat family, and Batman himself especially, having to try and, like, internalize and discuss that. But the problem is, instead of this being this something where he clearly doesn't like it, but he can't really argue that it's not in some level working, he just yells like a child. He's immediately angry. He immediately gets all antsy about it. And it just doesn't feel like it's really doing anything to sort of tackle it. And of course, like, later in the issue, something that happens that kind of, like, spurs things on is that one of her guys tries to rob a rich apartment, but there's a woman there, and she ends up shooting the guy, and he goes out the window. So it's actually the burglar who dies, and it's like this has led to someone dying, just on the other end of everything. So it's like, okay, this is clearly, that's what the end of the issue is. So that clearly we're going to deal with that, and the idea that this will breed more consequences in other ways that maybe Selena hasn't predicted, which is a fair thing to look at, and it's a fair point for Batman to argue. It just feels like his reaction in this And well, I'm okay with him reacting in a way that doesn't feel quite right, in the sense that he's going to come around and like sort of like understand better later. He just doesn't feel well written the way he reacts in this.
Yeah.
And that's a shame, because I actually think the idea of saying to him, sometimes it's okay, like, it's actually better to let some of the small fish effectively exist so that all the really bad things don't happen. That's an interesting philosophical question to throw at him.
Like, because I understand him, like, wanting to stop purse snatchers, right, from old ladies, right?
Ah, sure, yeah.
Like, I get that. Again, that's a kind of paradigmatic type of crime. But him being upset that they're ripping off, like, again, I feel like the type of person Thomas Wayne was that is, oh, they were just jewels, right?
Yeah.
Like, who cares if they got ripped off? Well, you know, it's still not going to stop us from trying to fix the city. And I feel that that's where Bruce should be, right? Is let me focus on stopping Joker and Two-Face and Riddler and not have to worry about this. This is one less thing off my plate.
Or even if you try to like explore the idea that, you know, Batman comes from a rich family, so he has this 1%er kind of perspective on things, and you want to explore how that clouds his judgment. That's another fine idea to explore. I just don't feel like this book is doing it with the nuance that I would actually like to see these things happen. This is, I don't know, like, I feel like there's a better execution for almost every idea in here that I think is a fine idea on paper. It's just, you know.
Yeah. I missed the nuance that Zdarsky had with the Knight. Just doing the origin story and, you know, these little smaller stuff. Seems like when he's taking bigger swings is when we're having a lot of these issues.
It's a shame. Red Hood actually goes to meet with Selina after this and basically says, hey, I love this, what you're doing. It's a great idea. I'm on board.
See, out of anybody I could see that, it is him. Also, I'm surprised that Dick wasn't more open to it, considering that's kind of what he's been doing over in Bloodhaven. I mean, not necessarily the crime, right? He's giving people the stuff they need so they don't have to go commit the crimes, right? But I'm almost more surprised he's not more open to Selina doing that, you know, by refocusing.
Yeah. I mean, he doesn't come out too hard against her. He's kind of, you know, lukewarm on the negative as opposed to, like, you know, he's not Damien yelling at the top of his lungs.
Right. Actually, I do love that the little a-hole is yelling just like Batman is. That's how you know that they're related.
Selina, of course, has to fight Jason for like 3 pages when he first shows up at her place because it's a comic book. But then once they've got the upper hand and Jason's been put down, he's like, no, like, I'm kind of into this. Let's do it. And she's like, look, you can't come and meet me in person. And he's basically like, hey, you could use someone on the inside of the Bat family whispering in their ears to try and like turn them on your side. So he's effectively going to be a plant. Although I feel like out of all the Bat family, the one that they're all trained to maybe ignore is Jason Todd, given what he does and what his past is. But interestingly, Selina also says to Jason, no killing. Like, she's like, no, don't kill, because all you're going to do is make Batman angrier, and that's not what we're about. So it's interesting that even Selina takes that high road when it comes to Jason here. But yeah, Batman talks about feeling old and how he's struggling to keep up, and he has to keep the idea of Batman alive, even if the human person is starting to like struggle with it. The bat signal comes on, and he goes and talks to Montoya, and Montoya's like, basically says, I need information on this stuff that's happening. And he's like, and she says that, look, when Jim Gordon was doing this, he was happy to just tell you everything and then wait for you to deliver bad guys. This has to be a two-way street with me. You have to give me stuff too. So she does that, and then she also points out, and by the way, Montoya's face in a couple of these panels is some of the worst in the book.
No.
She says that, look, crime has fallen in these past 8 weeks when you've been missing, and not only that, crime's also falling since I became commissioner. And Batman just responds with, hey, stats can be manipulated. The streets will tell me what I need to know. And then Batman goes looking and sort of questions, you know, maybe it is being really quiet. I've not found anything to beat up all night. Like, everything is kind of on the down low. Also, it teases Riddler. Riddler's watching this meeting on the rooftop with Montoya, and he's basically saying that Batman, like, maybe could use a friend. So Riddler might even try and ally himself with Batman, probably with an ulterior motive because he's the Riddler. But yeah, they do set that up. So that's basically it. There's a scene where Batman goes to a bar called Flunkies, which is where a lot of goons hang out, and the villains will sometimes come here to recruit. but there's almost no one there, and the guy's like, yep, everything's been really quiet recently. And then we get to the crime scene at the end where the burglar is Roland, his name, who used to work for Freeze and Riddler, who was practicing his heist techniques for Catwoman. And the final couple panels is Batman looking in the reflection of the blood, saying that his mission's become tainted, and that we stop crime. And as he's saying this, his cowl's turning turning purple, and then the thought bubble turns to a purple circle saying we stop crime. And then the final panel's an all-black panel saying, because we're Batman. So it seems like Zur-En-Ar's having influence. I don't know if he's outright turned into him at the end, or if it's just the idea that he's still whispering in his ear kind of thing as he's going.
It kind of is. Zur-En-Ar has become kind of the Batman without Bruce aspect, which I don't mind Zdarsky doing, because it does show, Bruce is going to have these connections to things. And maybe that's ultimately going to be the point. It's like his whole arc is going to be like, all right, don't sweat the small stuff. Don't forget that we're here to try to help Gotham be better, and you're not going to stop all crime.
Yeah. Also, when Selina was talking to the family, like they straight up start talking about how the fact that we never got married because you said this city needed a Batman, and now I've decided that it needs me. So should we go get married since we're both here? And like, there's a couple. Basically, she says the kids don't like seeing the parents fight, and then I think Steph says, "So yeah, I don't like when mom and dad fight." So they're kind of doing like a whole mom and dad, which pisses off Damien because like she's not my mother.
Yeah, which I do like. Him just being a constant reminder of Selina, right?
Yeah. So I mean, I appreciate like respecting the continuity there. It's. The art's just not for me. I feel like it's very, like, the faces are too clean in places, and it's not like it's not like a good clean. It's not like a nice flat, like, artistic clean like a Fornes or something like that. This is more like, I don't know, just something that I don't like about it. But so sometimes like there's just too many sharp edges, or sometimes it's just a case of like it looking like they're kind of expressionless aside from like the obvious parts of the mouth and the eyes, which make it feel kind of like Uncanny Valley-esque, I guess. Yeah, so not good art, and like I think the concepts are solid, but the execution is leaving a lot to be desired, which is not a surprise because I dropped the Catwoman run a couple issues after Tini Howard took over, and I've been very critical of Zdarsky's Batman. Pretty much, like, I had some good things to say about that first arc, but it kind of kept pushing it a little bit towards the end, and then once we got to that second arc, it was, the gloves were off, and it was a rough time, and I can still see some of those problems creeping in here. So yeah, this continues in Batman, I think next week. So, is it next week? Maybe it's not next week. Maybe the week after. But regardless,
I'm looking through the issue right now since I got it, but I didn't get it to read it. And like some of the stuff like with Batman looks pretty good. Like, although the cape looks kind of weird.
Yeah, well, he's wearing a cowl though. It's more the regular faces that I think really have an issue.
No, I'm just saying, like, his Batman looks pretty, like that. Looks pretty good. But I was just looking at some of the other stuff is a little bit off. But yeah, I get what you're saying about the faces though, because I had to see the Montoya stuff for myself.
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
and it's like there's too much shadows on the face. Yeah. Anyway, this I had seen on like Thursday, someone mentioned that basically this boiled down to that stupid internet argument that if Batman wanted to really help, he would just give money to help the poor. And I feel like that was a bit, hearing you talk about it, that was too much of a, oh man, he's got a leg cramp. And I didn't knock over my computer though. That's a benefit.
Too much of a simplification, I think you'd try to say. Yeah,
that's what I mean. Too much of an overgeneralization of what it is, because there is some nuance here to Selina's point, and all that. Oh my goodness, we might have to take a break.
Matt's in writhing pain right now, everyone.
It's not as bad as other things this week. Like my thumb that is still hyperextended, but oh man, I think if I sit like this, I think we're okay.
Okay,
So
well,
like,
I was just going to rate the book because
go ahead.
I mean, sadly, I'm like morbidly curious what they do with this, despite the fact that obviously I have a lot of problems with the execution. I'll probably. I'm kind of tempted to just sort of give it a 6 because at least the concepts are interesting, even if I think the execution is very lacking. And I don't like the art. Maybe 5.5. Maybe I'll say 5.5. I'll say it's just over that midway point because at least conceptually, I think there's some interesting debates to be had here.
It has potential. Like judging from hearing what you were saying about it, the stuff with Zer and R and how that is going to play into Selena, right? And her ideals of Gotham versus Zer and R's Batman's ideals of Gotham. I still can't believe they thought it was a good idea to have Batman yell, "My parents were rich." Like that's still like that's
that was a face palm kind of moment. I was gobsmacked by that. But hey, my parents were rich. How dare you insult the rich? My parents were rich.
Yeah, that's man. And Dick should have said, "Yeah, mine too." You know, like, what's your point, Bruce?
Yeah.
Wow.
No one's saying that they should go and murder rich people. They're just saying that they can survive a little bit of theft. That's all.
Yeah.
All right. 5.5. I think I'll give that then. All in.
Sure.
But against my better judgment, I think I'll read. At least I'll read the Batman issue because that's next. Yeah. And then if I feel like reading the Catwoman issue, then we'll see how it goes. But. All right. Action Comics presents the Doomsday Special Issue 1. Dan Waters writing with Eddy Barrows on at least the main story anyway, because there was a backup. I guess that this is not an annual just because they already had one, I think. So they've called it the Doomsday Special instead. Couldn't they just call it, I mean, I guess it's not annual at that point, but they could just call it Annual Issue 2? 2023, maybe?
But then it's not an annual, then it's a biannual.
True.
Yeah. So, I mean, they could have just called it the Action Comics Special, right? Is that what they did?
Oh, Action Comics presents the Doomsday Special.
Yeah, I don't know. That's right. I did enjoy this.
I mostly did. What I'll say. So I think it does feel a little bit overlong for what it is because the middle of it where they're just kind of in hell doing stuff does feel like it's just kind of I don't want to say repetitive, but it goes on a bit long. But so the story of this is that Kara has a nightmare, which by the way, we just had a nightmare event. Like I got like red flags at the start of this when she starts talking about nightmares. Don't worry though, much more interesting here.
Yes.
She basically has a nightmare about Doomsday, and her and Clark are sitting at the table talking about Doomsday, and she says, "Hey, what was it like when he killed you?" And he basically talks about it, about how, you know, it was the first time he ever really felt tired in his life was when he was like trying to throw punches against Doomsday, and then things went black, and it was this, you know, this was like nothing he'd ever fought before. You know, he really sells up the idea of how bad Doomsday is. And then, you know, she leaves, you know, when the kids come in, and it's a whole thing. And basically, I was like, oh, this is all very nice. It's a shame that Doomsday... Because the reference in this book that Doomsday popped back up during Lazarus Planet, and that he popped back up during something else as well. And I'm like...
Yeah, it was during Lazarus Planet, and I remember reading it, but I forgot about it until this minute. Until I sat down to read it. So I don't even know if we talked about that one. But it was something that I remember reading that, like... It was almost like the PTSD that was Doomsday was manifesting because of the Lazarus Reign, and this one guy was kind of the bulwark of it, and Johns tries to help him through it, and he ends up being consumed by the memory of Doomsday, and it kind of self-destructs, and you know, we end up seeing him running through hell later, right? But yeah, it was this thing that I completely forgot had happened until they brought it up here.
Yeah, all I was going to say there is that I feel like, you know, this would feel like really cool if this was the first time Doomsday had been brought up in a long time, but because it's like the Lazarus Reign was like earlier this year, like that's not that long ago. It feels like he pops up maybe a bit too often. That said though, I like this idea of really being scared of him, and it turns out this nightmare wasn't really just a nightmare. This was Martian Manhunter transmitting to Kara because... so what was the guy's name? Is it RC? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, I believe so.
So he like, you know, there's all these thoughts of Doomsday and Kryptonian going towards Martian Manhunter, and he couldn't really decrypt it, so he sent it to Kara so that she could understand it and maybe tell him what's going on. Notably, did not send it to Clark because Clark was actually killed by Doomsday and might be too traumatic for him. I like that little detail. That's why
I do too, and it's like because you got to figure out why does this not go to Clark, but just the idea too that Kara has her own relationship with Doomsday as, you know, what Doomsday was on Krypton, right? It was kind of like this myth of science that's been perverted, and, you know, and they don't believe in a god, right? In the singular, you know, creator being.
No, she talks about how, like, there's gods and stuff on Krypton, but they're more treated like myths and legends as opposed to anyone actually worshipping them as a church kind of thing.
But Doomsday did feel like, because he was this perverted sense, you know, that Krypton was a society based on science, that he was this twisted science experiment that went wrong, and it kind of represented all the ills of Krypton, you know. So the idea that she's the one that's going to go up against us, the Kryptonian that actually remembers Krypton itself, I thought was a real nice touch.
Yeah, and there's a really nice page here where Martian Manhunter touches her head to sort of like read the dream back from her perspective. Yeah. And it's like his fingers are on her forehead, but then inside her head it's all this fire and like Doomsday's hands coming up. It's really, really nice. Also, I said it was Eddy Barrows on art, but like I do want to mention that Eber Ferreira is also credited in here as well.
It usually works with Eddy Barrows. Doing inks and colors and stuff too.
Yeah, so basically though, when he touches her head, they get pulled into hell. And it basically turns out that Doomsday is a lot like Freddy Krueger, where the power comes from people believing in him. In fact, same with hell itself. Hell only exists because enough people on Earth believe in it. I love, again, Dan Waters doing this type of metaphysical storytelling. We saw it in Night Terrors, right? Him doing it here again, where hell exists, but only exists because enough people believe in it. And, you know, if you can get enough people to change their minds, right, it'll change aspects of hell. Yeah. So there's all these like tortured souls here, and then Doomsday eventually comes out. Honestly, that first panel, well, not the first panel, but it's like the bottom half of the page where he comes out and he's biting like the demon or whatever it is. I was like, he looks like a demented version of Bowser from Super Mario Brothers in that panel.
Kind of. You're not wrong.
Yeah,
it's all the spikes and almost like a turtle shell.
Yeah, it's because of the angle that you're looking at him. But so it turns out he's been basically gaining this following in hell amongst all the demons and wayward souls because they're all giving him more strength by believing in him. And it's basically him trying to will himself back into existence. And what's happened here is that the person who sent a message out to Martian Manhunter to lure him and Kara in here turns out to effectively be the devil. Technically, he's the first of the fallen is his actual name, but he's effectively the devil. And he doesn't like that Doomsday is taking all this power and hell from him.
Yeah, he doesn't like the competition.
Yes.
You know? So in DC, you have the whole, you know, I would call it the Abrahamic God and devil, right? You have this as the first of the fallen, and then they've referred to Big G God as the one above all, you know. And those characters very rarely get brought up just because of it has to be like a Morrison level writer that, you know, kind of plays with those because it can get super dodgy. And I feel like Waters really played it in here because the first of the fallen does not feel like Neuron or Satanus or any of those type or even Trigon.
No,
there is a sinisterness to him. That kind of rides that.
He looks more like
line.
he looks more like a dark elf with just this big red cloak on. But like Doomsday is trying to build up like enough power from getting everyone to be scared of him that he can break through the big door that will lead him back into the real world. So you know, we get Kara is given this like devil armor to fight Doomsday, which, you know, is cool enough. And there's a lot of good art like mixed in here. Like I want to point out, there's a panel where like Martian Manhunter's like on fire basically, and that looks really great. There's the hordes of like demons or like lost souls kind of watching the fight and stuff like that. There's a lot of good stuff in here. But the fight does go on for a little bit, which is the one thing I'd maybe critique the issue for, is that it feels like we're just kind of doing fighting back and forth a bit. But ultimately, Martian Manhunter tries to like connect to all the souls down here to convince them to hope instead of fear, which doesn't quite work, but they end up all coming together and like basically barricading the door with themselves to the point where they actually merge together into like a membrane that covers the door and seals it shut. It's actually kind of disgusting and very like
it's body horror.
It's body horror, yeah. It's not quite H.R. Giger, but it's like like some sort of like weird Cronenberg like flesh looking texture.
It kind of reminds me of Reanimator kind of stuff, where it's kind of all goopy, right? Like when they kind of all merge together.
Yeah, because like at first it's just like you can sort of see that it's just a mass of bodies, but then the next couple of pages it does just look like sort of strings of like flesh and stuff that are all just connected now.
Yeah.
So that stuff's kind of cool.
I do like too that it's one soul in particular that, you know, Martian Manhunter's like, yeah, they didn't have to, right? They didn't feel the hope, but they chose to do this anyways.
Yeah.
You know, so it's almost as if Kara and Jean did have an influence in hell, and it was just enough to have a tipping point to where they go into self-preservation mode, right? To, you know, and it's not just to save the day, right? They're still acting, and you know, as people in hell would, right?
Yeah. So you know, Devil, for lack of a better word, sends Kara and Jean back to the real world. And they're like, hey, that was kind of depressing and kind of hopeless, but hey, we'll just try and make the best of the world, I guess. And the final page is basically mimicking that very first couple of pages of Death of Superman, which is Doomsday trying to punch his way out of this flesh wall. And it's the same vertical panels, and it's like the idea that maybe he'll break out someday still. And it says, Doomsday's story continues in the pages of Superman in Action Comics. So this is leading to something.
Yeah.
So it seems like it might be relevant going forward. But it was a pretty solid read, I would say. Like I like it being a Kara and Jean focused story. That was kind of neat. I liked some of the mythology it built up about hell and the idea of like fear giving Doomsday power. Because I kind of like the idea that the science behind Doomsday is that his body, like once he's killed by something, he's able to sort of like defend against that the next time, right? He's always like evolving from whatever hits him. He gets stronger. I love the idea of that, like continuing to a point where he even like starts to find a way to come back from death through this meta reason of like, oh, if everyone believes I exist, I can come back from even that, you know?
Yeah, it's Doomsday as an idea, not just like the character Doomsday, right? But it's almost Waters having commentary too on, you know, if enough people believe that the world's ending, is it not ending, right? So if enough people start to believe in this creature, even if they're these wayward souls, we're going to be into trouble, right? Because it's Doomsday as an idea. And I love that, because I'm not huge on Doomsday, just because every time a writer tries to bring him up, it's always, you know, like we're kind of seeing it in Jurgens, right, in the back of Action Comics with what's his name, Doombreaker, and that kind of stuff. And it just seems like the same note played on different instruments. Here, this is a whole new take on Doomsday. And it even fits in with the Morrison Action Comics idea of Super Doom and what that represents. You know, it's not just this physical manifestation of Doomsday. It's Doomsday to a culture. It's, you know, across the spectrum. And I like the idea here, too, that Doomsday is a singular organism, right? There's only one, right? So if he's in hell, he will find a way out eventually. You know, and now is this going to be a problem down the line? Is it going to be a, you know, because I'm trying to see how this is going to fit into Superman in Action Comics, right? And this feels to me more like along the lines of that whole kind of Arthurian thing that Philip Kennedy Johnson did with the super family and the future and whatnot, and like how would they respond to Doomsday? That was my first thought here, because and this the whole idea of the House of L standing together against the thing that killed, you know, the forebear and all this other stuff. It's a whole idea. I just can't seem to make it fit into Williamson's with everything that we got in there right now with Supercore.
I'd be surprised, but maybe they'll do like a crossover event or something.
Yeah, but I hope Dan Waters has a part in it, because I'm really enjoying the metaphysicalness. It's up there with the kind of Ram V, you know, when Ram V writes about ideas, you know, it's kind of up there with me on here. And I get why Connor likes Dan Waters as much as he does, you know?
Yeah, I suspect maybe he'll end up... The fact that he wrote this might suggest that maybe he'll end up writing a backup in one of the super books going forward or something. If he hasn't already been, I can't really remember who's been on those.
Yeah.
So there's a backup here, though, which is still Dan Waters, and this is this character RC that you were mentioning from the Lazarus Range story, the one who Doomsday was using to try and get into the world, that Martian Manhunter helped, and RC effectively sent himself to hell to take Doomsday with him. So RC's still in hell, but he's in a different circle of hell. So they're talking about Dante's 7 circles of hell. And he's on this other level, and this, demon or whatever he is coming after him with... Now, they call them Doomhounds, but I was like, why not just Doomsday Dogs? Like, that's alliteration, baby.
Yeah, because I'm feeling that they're trying to go after the Hellhound Doomsday.
Yeah, I guess.
Portmanteau, which I kind of like because it's showing Doomsday's impression on Hell, right? That he's even warping the Hellhounds, right, by his mere presence being there.
Yeah, so I am curious about this in the sense that it's building up more of this mythology about how Dan Waters and DC are going to treat Hell and all that stuff. But, you know, I have not little context for this character so far. So him realizing that because he's in hell and because he was tethered to Martian Manhunter, he can basically have some of Martian Manhunter's powers by turning into this hero in hell. And that maybe hell should have its own superhero. Like, that is kind of interesting that there's a superhero in hell.
The Superman of Hell, as I believe, as he calls himself. And just the idea, too, it was the Martian Manhunter identity that people seem to forget about of Bloodwind. Right, who was effectively killed by Doomsday, right? Like, that was part of the death of Superman. Just the idea that he's down there now, he's taken on this personification to be the Superman of Hell. It's such a great idea.
Yeah, and there's like another demon watching him by the end. It just says, to be continued in the pages of Action Comics. So I suspect there might be a backup coming in action with this. I do appreciate that because he's in hell, there's still kind of a villainous look to some of his outfit. Like he's still got the long Dracula like collar on his cape. You know?
Well, and I like the chains around his wrist too. Cause it gives him a vibe, you know, something that's broken out. But again, getting big Spawn vibes from what I know about Spawn.
Well, the chains especially made me think of Spawn because Spawn's got a whole chain thing going with his outfit and powers.
I'm gonna see this whole Bloodwind DC. Why even that it came up, right? Like, was it like a response to in April '92 is when he first debuted, created by Dan Jurgens. So I wouldn't be surprised, but yeah, just the idea of Hell having a Superman, and that also fits in with what Philip Kennedy Johnson's been doing about the Superman as an idea, and this fits in with. This is almost a counter to Doomsday as an idea. Is now that Superman.
So when you say this character, I don't remember this character from Death of Superman. Is this literally that character, or is this a new version of that character?
This is a new version of the character. Bloodwind was was an identity of Jean Johns.
Okay.
That he was his alter ego was Raphael Arce or RC. I'm trying to see. In recent times, he gets up on the gym.
Wait, so this was just an alias of Jean back in the day, but somehow
I believe so. I'm just trying to check because it was revealed that Bloodwind that died, in quotes, was Jean. So I know they are tied.
So what I'm asking though is this just them being cute and they've sort of made this its own character and they're referencing that Jean had this name at one point, or are they actually going to like say and reveal here that this character is like somehow Jean split off into like two or something like that?
That's what I'm checking right now because it's the character biography that's listed in Wiki right now is very all over the place. That it involves a demon named Rot and a blood gem and all this other stuff. But I believe that Martian Manhunter, because of the psychic part of it, became a part of Bloodwind, and Bloodwind became a part of him. So, I know he fought he was with the Justice League when he fought Doomsday.
Yeah, it's been so long since I read Death of Superman. I don't even know. And I'm pretty sure when I read it, there was probably other characters that I didn't know then that I like would obviously know now. but
Yep.
yeah, I can't say Bloodwind.
So this is
left
this is
an
what it was.
impression.
It says in recent times the demon Rot sucked Bloodwind into the gem and held him captive while mind controlling Martian Manhunter, compelling him to wear the gem and impersonate Bloodwind. Using Bloodwind's identity, the Manhunter rejoined the Justice League, seeking a power source which would enable Rot to escape from the microworld. So yeah, it was Martian Manhunter impersonating Bloodwind. So it feels like this is just the path into him becoming his own character through this whole thing.
No, but you just said there was a separate character though. He was impersonating this other dude.
Yeah.
So this is just a new version of that old character.
Yeah, with the same name. So I wonder if they'll do a legacy thing. Because I didn't catch the first name. Was it Raphael?
Oh, I don't. I
don't know. I just remember RC. I'm trying to see because he comes in Day of Judgment.
It would be way back at the start, probably when Martian Manhunter first shows up, where he maybe mentions it.
But yeah, just the idea. If they're just playing on the idea that Bloodwind left a impact on Martian Manhunter, and the Martian Manhunter leaves on this character. If that's how they're going to bring up the idea of Bloodwind now in modern times, I'm kind of okay with that. You know, it's trying to streamline continuity in a way.
I mean, it's all interesting.
Yeah.
So far, so I enjoyed this issue. So.
Yeah, I had a story thought he was something to do with Martian Manhunter being undercover. I did not realize it involved a demon and a blood gem and all this other weird stuff until today. So it was my understanding that he was just Martian Manhunter undercover. So. Well,
there you go.
Yeah.
So I mean, I didn't enjoy the backup as much as the main story, obviously, but it was interesting for what it was. I'm curious to learn more. So, what are you rating the Doomsday special?
I'm giving this an 8.5.
I'll probably just go straight 8, just because the pacing takes a bit of a hit in the middle of the main story. But the art is pretty good, and the concepts are really strong. I love that it's a Kara and Jean story. I like a lot of the little details they put in, and it made me curious about what they're doing with Doomsday going forward. So, credit where credit's due. All right. Tales of the Titans, Raven issue 1, Tini Howard and Eleonora Carlini on the art. This was from a couple of weeks ago. Matt had been reading these and couldn't that week, but has went back and caught up. So, on you go.
So would you be surprised to know that this is a struggle between Raven and her father Trigon?
Trigon and a Raven story? That doesn't sound like Raven.
Except, much like the Starfire one, which was kind of about Starfire's legacy and where she is, you know, who she is to the people of Tamaran, this kind of plays at the idea of Raven as a Titan versus Raven as Trigon's daughter. So in this, Raven and Starfire are going to a character named Pantha, who I think was a member of the Teen Titans at one point. She's pregnant, and they're going to her baby shower. And, you know, Starfire is very excited because there's going to be a baby. And Raven's kind of like, look, I'm feeling like weird stuff about this. Like anytime a baby's around, I think of my upbringing and how my mom really wasn't given a choice. You know, she was taken advantage of and you know, didn't get to live the life she wanted to live. And it's just something that I'm going to have to get through. And Corey gives her a hug. And I was like, you know, we're growing up now. We're gonna have to see our friends having kids. Like, this can't be a problem all the time. Meanwhile, while they're at the baby shower, Trigon's in his realm, and he is yelling at one of his sons, who goes by the name of Trilogy, which is still a kind of dumb name. But he just wants to be, you know, he wants to serve Darkseid. He wants to serve Trigon. It's very the same dynamics of Darkseid and you know, Calabac or any one of his kids. That basically, you failed me. If you want, you need to produce an heir of a grandson. So then I can, you know, I'm not going to be able to form myself on Earth without one. So you go down there and do that. So through this, Raven hears a call to this church where there's a lady that is pregnant on an altar, like she's almost like she's praying, and Raven can feel that something's off, right? Like there's a desperation that almost like, even though this woman's pregnant, she's having a change of heart. As she starts investigating more, this angel, like when I say angel, the dude looks like something out of, biblical art. This big blonde guy with huge wings, almost like a loincloth toga wrapped around him. And he proclaims to be Amadeus, a spirit of the Azarathis. So I don't know if you remember much of Raven's actual origin, right? So while she's the daughter of Trigon, her mom is able to escape to the Azarath plane, right? And that's where she was raised. That's why, her magical words, I always forget what the full three are, but one of them is Azarath. And so it's one of these beings from Azarath that's come to help her shepherd this lady, because this lady is going to be a vessel of Trigon, right? And Raven doesn't want the same thing that happened to her mother to happen to this lady. But she can't get close, because once Trigon's involved, they're going to be able to sense her power, if this is a cult to Trigon, right? So Amadeus gives her this, essentially this box. It looks almost like a music box that says you can put essentially your soul self here, right? And they won't be able to sense any of that Trigon-ness or Azarathi magic powers on you. And you'll be able to essentially go undercover into this church. As she goes, she mentions, they ask her if she's ready. She goes, of course, I'm a Titan. I'm always ready. They go in, and there's this super, dark occult ritual going on in this church. It's almost Church of Blood-esque. This guy, older guy, long hair, mustache, beards, has this big, huge scythe, and he is cutting himself, chanting about the blood of Trigon. They end up giving, as she's in her human form, Rachel, a baptism in blood, to which then she passes out and ends up, waking up running through the halls of this church, where she runs into Eden, who's the lady that she came to help, right? She's pregnant. Come to find out that the guy that was doing the ritual is the one that she's going to have the baby with, and that she's having second doubts that if this was even the right person in the right circumstances. But they're like, he's loud. He doesn't actually believe in a lot of this stuff. So as they're doing another ritual, Raven starts to break it up. They realize that when they realize that who she is, these like creatures come up out of the blood, and they're servants of Trigon. She ends up fighting them off even without her powers, because part of this ritual that Santiago, the older guy, was doing was to pull out the scythe of the hunter, and it's this big bone, it looks like a bone version of the Grim Reaper scythe, right? But it's more hand-sized instead. So they end up fighting these creatures off with the scythe. She explains that she didn't realize, she's still new to the church. She didn't realize she thought they were all in danger. But he reassures her that's just part of the ritual. She has a lot to learn. Rachel/Raven tries to talk Eden into leaving, but she doesn't. She feels like she's still making the right choice. And then Amadeus comes back to her, and is like, you're certainly doing all this fast. You are convincing her. I can feel this. We're then, because he comes to her in a dream. She wakes up and realizes that something's wrong. So they're out on like the grounds of this church, riding this horse. It looks like they're hunting a unicorn, and that's what they had summoned the scythe to do. They're prepping Eden for her wedding to Santiago, which will fully seal this whole ritual. They end up summoning Amadeus through this ritual, which Raven now reveals that she realized this whole time that Amadeus wasn't who he thought he was, is that he essentially was Trilogy, her brother, and that he was trying to manipulate her into trying to push the woman so far into leaving that she would stay, right? Kind of do what they needed. But Raven mentioned that she's an empath, and the reason she went through with all this is she knows that Trilogy's heart's not in it, right? That he's actually tired of being mistreated by Trigon, and that he has failed on purpose. Once she brings all this up, he kind of gets embarrassed, and they start fighting. She ends up teleporting him away with her soul self, which then reveals to this entire church of Trigon, right, that she is Raven. So she leaves. Eden decides not to go through with the wedding anyways. And she's like, well, you didn't, why are you helping me? You don't know me. She's like, it's my duty to help people. That's, what I do. Because I'm a Titan gets said a lot in this, and it's probably the biggest issue that I would have is like, we don't need, it's called Tales of the Titans. I don't need to be reminded every 10 pages that you're a Titan, Raven, and Tini Howard on top of that. So her needn't leave. She ends up calling Starfire on the phone to let her know, hey, I'm done with my mission, and as she goes back into her house, there's a knock on the door, and it's her brother, Trilogy, asking if she's ready to talk. And she goes, yeah, am I ever? And then ends. So it seems like, I don't know if this is going to play into some of the Raven stuff that we have been getting in the pages of like Nightwing and Titans, right? Or if this is just setting stuff up for Raven later, right? Almost as if she's building a unified front against the, with the sons and daughters of Trigon, because he's got to have a bunch out there, right? I think it's not just Raven. And this just thwarted his grandson through all of this. But yeah, some of the magic stuff gets a little bit confusing just because it is magic, and Tini Howard doesn't do like a fantastic job of laying out what these actual rules are. It just kind of gets built up to, occult shenanigans. But just the idea that Raven knew that this angel creature, right, was her brother, even without her powers, she could sense that something was off. I kind of like that. It kind of shows her swagger. So a lot of fun. Didn't enjoy this as much as the Starfire one, right? But I feel like it, that just comes down to maybe the characters. I don't have the same affinity for Raven. The art is pretty decent. The creatures look really, really good. Sometimes Raven's face, it's almost a less is more kind of approach to the art style. So it's not quite my thing, but I wouldn't call it bad. Okay. A lot of the faces sometimes are very simple versus, the Santiago character, the guy with the long hair, beard, and mustache. There's a lot more going on to him because he has more expressive stuff through his facial hair versus, Raven, who kind of has this short cropped hair, these big earrings and stuff. But yeah, the action sequences look pretty good when she teleports her brother away with her soul self. It looks pretty cool. It's got the big Raven logo working for it. But yeah, pretty enjoyable read on a week that we didn't have a lot to read, so I'm thankful for that. So rating, I'll give this a 7.5.
Okay. All right, well, every month on patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, you can make myself or Connor read a book at one of the higher tiers, and obviously I've been working through American Vampire for one of the patrons. For this month, we're doing half an issue because, obviously a comic's like 20 to 24 pages typically, but it's fine if there's an annual in there, it's not a big deal. I'll just do it. It's not a big deal to have a few extra pages, but this Anthology issue 1, which is what's up next, is like an 80-page behemoth. So I'm splitting it in two, and I'm doing the first half neatly. There's 10 credited stories. So I've read the first 5, and as a bonus, Matt also read this one because he's been jealous of me reading all this American Vampire and had to get in on the
And also, I have this is the last trade that I have, so now I'm excited. I get to go spend more money on American Vampire to go past where I was. So I am going to try to read as a bonus whenever Pete reads for Patreon. I'm going to try to at least read that issue after we finish with these, just because we're going into unknown waters for me at this point. Up to this, I'd read everything. It was a little bit. I'd forgotten a lot of stuff. I'd forgotten a lot of these because it's been so long. So,
yeah. I didn't remember anything because I definitely read this anthology back when it came out, and I didn't remember a damn thing about it. So I'll just, because the credits are all at the start of the book rather than in each of the stories, I'll just tell you who all the teams are. So the bookend story, which we'll only get half of this time, is The Man Comes Around, and that's Scott Snyder with Albuquerque. So that's the regular team on that. And then our first actual story is Lost Colony, which is Jason Aaron with Declan Shelvey on art. And then there's Bleeding Kansas by Albuquerque writing with Ivo Malazzo on art. And then there's Canadian Vampire. Go on, guess everyone. Guess who's writing a story called Canadian Vampire? It's Jeff Lemire with Ray Fox on art. And then the last one we'll talk about this week is Greed by Becky Cloonan, who did both script and art. Yeah.
Here's the full thing. I had forgotten Becky Cloonan was also an artist up until this, because I see her name. Yeah, I see her name as a writer a lot. And here's the thing. Let's get her drawing stuff again, because I will say the art in that section was very, very nice. So yeah.
So the bookend is in 1967, which I think, as far as, other than maybe a quick flash hero there, is the furthest we've been in the timeline of the overall American Vampire saga. So it's basically Skinner going to this little diner that he likes to go to, because we know he loves the licorice, and there's this place is a licorice pie that he loves to come here for.
Have you ever heard of licorice pie?
I have never heard of licorice pie in my life. I
can't imagine what it would taste like. So yeah, because I know licorice is a plant, right? That's where the like the Twizzlers and stuff gets its name from. But I just can't imagine that the licorice, what that would taste like. So leave it to a vampire to break my brain.
I do not know, but basically the chef says, hey, it's fresh out the oven or whatever, don't open the box, let it settle before you dig into it. But then he goes to open it anyway while he's still in the diner, and the cook starts sweating. Someone has obviously paid him to put a bomb in his cake box. So the next page is a glorious big explosion. And there's some guys on motorbikes watching from a distance saying, oh, that's it. But then there's a big cliffhanger here where Skinner Sweet steps out. Most of his clothes have burned off. He's all vamped up with the fangs out and stuff. And it's like, that's your cliffhanger for the bookend. So we won't get to see how this ends until next month. But that's how the story kicks off. But that leads us into all the actual anthology stories. So the first one's basically a tale of like a very early set of vampires coming to America and Native Americans sort of encountering them. These kids find this camp of white settlers and they find dead bodies. And because there's a lot of rumors, like everyone's confused, like they never seem to go out hunting. How are they surviving the winter? You know, the natives don't understand.
Yeah, it's 1588, and they've been here for 3 winters. Yeah, and the natives are confused because they never see them hunt, they never see them out and about, but there's always smoke coming from the chimneys, so they're there, and so they send some people in to investigate, and what they find is not good.
Well, it's not even investigate. I think it's just 2 kids who wander in because they're
that's right,
curious, but they come back and warn the tribe who are considering going and checking things out, but then the vampires show up and kill most of them anyway. Absolute bloodbath. And basically the tribe leader goes off into the forest to try and like pray to his gods or whatever, and when he comes out later, when the few remaining survivors are being attacked by vampires, he stabs one in the heart with his wooden spear, and he's basically discovered
wood's a weakness.
He's discovered how to stake a vampire. And it's like, okay, we can maybe fight these guys off. But basically knowing that there's going to be more coming. So it's kind of interesting because it kind of just feels like it fits really well into the idea of the white man coming to America and taking the land. It just does it with this vampire horror kind of twist to it.
It's so that's what's going to happen in a lot of these, is they're really playing with history. And as a history nerd, especially in North America, this really speaks to me because the whole idea of this being called the Lost Colony, there is this colony off of the coast of Virginia called Roanoke that the people just disappeared. Guy brings his family, has to head back to England. He comes back completely gone. And so just I think it was the local indigenous people were the Wamapoke, which is the ones that Aaron shows the spotlight here, right? But instead of us finding out that this is Roanoke, this colony is known as New Carpathia, which, as we know, the European vampires are the Carpathian variety. The Carpathia Mountains is where Dracula, the legend, came from and whatnot. Yep. So they were trying to get a foothold here, and the natives put up a fight, knowing that this is just the first wave, essentially. And a very Jason Aaron-esque story. It's very brutal in parts, but there's also a bit of hope to it as well, right? So,
yeah, it's very brutal. I wasn't surprised this was the Jason Aaron story.
Yep.
It just kind of felt like his stuff. Mm-hmm. The next story is set a bit later. This is in Kansas, and it's this young couple who are coming, but he's a very progressive man in this couple who's basically trying to talk to people about abolishing slavery. And the locals just don't want to listen to him. They think that's a huge inconvenience. So, like, basically, they find out they're going to be pregnant, and these vampires come into town and burn down one of the buildings. And the husband's basically left fighting for his life as she has to run off. He gets bit by a vampire, and she runs off. Because the story actually starts with the wife in the woods on her own, and then it kind of cuts back to, like, okay, this is how she got there.
But it's like a single bullet left, right? And it seems pretty bleak.
Yeah. It seems like she's about to commit suicide, but it's when the sun comes up and it burns a lot of the vampires, and she's like... So there's kind of like a hope at the end of, like, the dawn always sort of comes. Yeah. I will say... I didn't really like the art in this story.
Yeah, the art was a bit of a like there's a watercolorness to it, but it's very messy. Like the line work is not clear. They're kind of squiggly, and it made it hard to kind of follow some of the action once it started kicking off.
Yeah, there's definitely some moments where they reference something, and I had to look again. To sort of see what they were talking about, or like, I mean, I get it now that I'm thinking about it, but it didn't jump out at the page at me, you know? Yeah.
Also, a real quick history lesson on this one. This is called Bleeding Kansas, which is an actual event in American history to where, as they were, American expansion was pushing west, they were trying to decide which states they were going to allow slavery in and which ones they weren't, right? So Kansas comes in, becomes a state, kind of leaves it to the people to who, if they're going to become a slave state or not. So what the surrounding states do, like Missouri, and because I think it was part of the Missouri Compromise, that there would be one free state, one slave state, but anyways, long story short, they leave it to Kansas to think for themselves, except people from the slave state next door start sending people, so they're known as border ruffians. So those are the guys that the vampires are taking, right, as these border ruffians that are coming in to help push the cause of slavery. So again, I like that Albuquerque uses this actual American historical event in order to tell a story about vampires.
Yeah, this is interesting. Obviously, I have a broad understanding of the time that slavery was happening in the US, but I don't know any of these specifics. So this direct small details of history is interesting.
If you want a good story, there's it's John Brown and his entire. It kind of is one of the events that led to the actual Civil War. Is that he essentially waged war in this Bleeding Kansas against the people that wanted slavery. And it ends up one of the generals of the Confederacy is the one that stops him. So there's this very poetic part of American history. And I feel like the story-wise here, Albuquerque really hits it, right? Because there is light at the end, right? Where, yes, we have to go through this bloody Civil War, but, some good things come out of it. And I feel like that's here. That's the overall story that he's telling. But yeah, anytime Bleeding Kansas, very fascinating story. If you're ever, looking for something to read, I'm not just directing this at Pete, but everyone that's listening. John Brown, that dude, he was a dude for sure.
Next story is the Jeff Lemire one, the Canadian vampire. So this is set in Canada, obviously, and it's 1877. And we're introduced to this sort of bounty hunter named Jack Warnhammer. who is this big Viking-looking dude.
This dude rules. I love this guy too.
Who takes a job to go and it's not a nice job. He's basically tasked to go kill natives because this group of white guys showed up and wanted this land, and they sent some of them up there to talk, and because they've not heard back from them, this guy who sold them the land is like, oh yeah, they're probably causing trouble, go and kill them. And when he goes up there, obviously it turns out that the white guys were vampires and have like massacred these people brutally. But there's one child survivor who tries to, and it's very new, it's very they come out at night mostly kind of vibes I was getting from this. But as soon as it was this big gruff guy working with a child who now has to protect, I was like, oh, this is so Jeff Lemire. This is
100%.
This is Sweet Tooth in the 1880s with the vampires is what this is.
I didn't even have to know that it was called Canadian Vampire to know that it was Lemire, just from the vibe of it all.
Yeah,
right? Like you just said.
Yeah, it's so Lemire. So basically, this guy, once these vampires actually show up, he's bonded, and it's only a few pages, but he's bonded enough with this kid that he's like, kid, you need to run. So when these vampires show up and they look all evil, they look kind of like they look kind of like, imagine like What We Do in the Shadows, but they've all got blonde hair instead of dark hair. So basically he stands his ground, he grabs a hatchet, and he fights off these vampires for as long as he can so this kid can escape, because the kid mentions that the vampires like destroyed all the canoes and stuff so that no one in the tribe could escape. It was basically this little island where they couldn't get away, and this kid's been building her own canoe
in the daytime, right?
In the daytime,
it was like, keep guard at night, build canoe in the day.
He fights off the vampires and dies, sacrifices himself whilst the kid gets away. That's the end of the story. Honestly, it's probably the best story in this first half just because it's so dramatic. It has this point and it feels like he's done something heroic by the end, and it's like, again, it's a bleak but hopeful ending. If there's one thing I could critique here actually is that they all have bleak but kind of hopeful endings. It's a bit repetitive in that sense.
I feel that's just because they're playing with history, right? And they're trying to get us up to the point of Skinner, where he's at in the anthology. Also, there's a little thing that probably went unnoticed by you, that as this native kid gets down, they take the name Kid and said that they had family that made it down to the Americas where it became a last name. Now, if I remember right, the greaser vampire killer is Travis Kidd.
So, quite right. Actually,
this is that's de facto,
we forgot to mention this as well, actually. The couple from the slavery story, their last name was Jones. So this is presumably Pearl's parents or grandparents or whatever.
Right, because she's from Kansas or Missouri, right? Like she's from somewhere in the Midwest, But so
I forgot to mention that, but I did notice that when I was reading
they were the Jones, So the fact that this native kid gets it out and
I'm glad you brought this up, because when I read this and it said, I even kept the name Kid and gave it on to my family, I was like, who do we know who's named Kid? And I couldn't think about it, but you're right, it's the Greaser Kid.
So
good. So no, I really like that one. I think and the art here is really good because it's obviously all these whites with dark lines. Occasionally there'll be panels with a lot of black negative space, but when the hatchet starts swinging, those just little streaks of red are really stick out and pop, because it's been so there's some muted colors, but it's mostly just black and white with a little bit of tint here or there. So the red really stuck out, even though it's a sort of watercolor red.
Yeah, it's very less is more style of the art here, and it definitely works to its advantage.
Yeah. So this Becky Cloonan story, to wrap things up, Greed, is basically a story of Skinner Street in the 1920s, a little bit before the start of American Vampire, where he gets involved in Hollywood because he's in Death Valley, and it's blistering hot, but this movie production shows up, and they start shooting these Western action scenes out in the desert. And basically the implication is that Skinner is sneaking in and like draining some of them of their blood so they're getting sick. So the first one he does this to is the actor, and they basically we need a stand-in, and it's like, hey, Skinner looks kind of like him, so they get him to come in and like do we can't do any close-ups, but he can be the stand-in for the action scene. So they have I thought Skinner was going to kill this other actor. I didn't think he was pretending. I thought he was actually just going to beat him to death.
Well, so remind me when, because he can be in the sunlight as an American vampire, right?
Yes.
He's just not at full strength, right?
That sounds right. That sounds right. Yeah.
Okay. So I remember their weakness is gold, but they
Yes.
still have some vampire, but
Well, it's
they
gold.
don't get burnt.
Also,
Yeah.
is it not the full moon as well as a weakness?
Yes, I believe they're vulnerable during the full moon.
Yeah.
Yeah. But during the sun, they can be out in the sun. They're just not at full vampire strength, right? Yeah. Okay.
Well,
because I saw that because I thought the same thing was like, oh, he's gonna just kill this dude.
But you
he's a vampire.
can beat a man to death with regular human strength.
Yeah, no, you can. But I was just like, is Skinner gonna just have to pull back, right?
Yeah.
From having to do this.
But yeah, so the guy basically implies that he did go a bit rough, but he doesn't kill him or anything.
Yeah.
And the sort of the casting lady's like, hey, you did all right. Maybe you should, try for more roles. And then the end of the story is that now the cameraman's sick, and that's where you kind of get, oh, Skinner's picking these guys off and just slowly feeding on them, and that's why they're all getting sick. Okay.
One of the things that gets me is Skinner in the beginning going, why did I come to a place called Death Valley? This was not smart. And just him lounging in the sun like half dead, and then, almost by chance his lifeline comes in. He
mentions it's like 300 feet below sea level or something like that. Mm-hmm. Why not just scoop some water out of the ocean and put it in there, and that lowers the sea level a bit? Just fill up Death Valley.
Yeah.
It
is pretty far, right? It is on the, Nevada, California border.
We have helicopters, Matt.
Yeah. It's just not that simple.
It could be that simple.
It is. There's 2 times that I've definitely regretted life decisions. One of them was recently in Havasu. The other one was going to Death Valley. We went to this date farm called in Tacoma called China Creek, and it's been there since the 1800s, right? And because of the way that the river sits, but as soon as we got out of the car, you get hit with the most oppressive heat you've ever felt. The flies are about the size of a quarter. So definitely Skinner not living his best life ending up there,
Yeah, but this oasis has came to him, and he's feeding off them. It's yeah, I think this is probably. The Lemire story is my favorite. This is my second favorite because it's got a neat little kind of. It kind of tells the story of how he got involved in Hollywood in the first place, but it also has this fun little twist to it, which is like, oh, this is what he's doing to these people who are in the desert. Whereas I think the first couple stories before that, there's good qualities to them, but they do kind of suffer from being kind of just the bullet. We always talk about this with these anthology style books, where sometimes you just don't have enough pages to really do much. So the Jason Aaron story and the Albuquerque story, I think both have good qualities to them, and I do like how they're sort of fitting history into them. But ultimately, as full stories, though, they are a little bit lacking, I guess.
Yeah, they're definitely set dressing for the world of American Vampire.
Yeah.
And I think that's okay in anthologies because it does help build out the bigger world.
Yeah, so I think out of these ones, like I like the opening bookend as well, but it's hard to judge that as a whole because it's only
it's half a story. But
I would definitely say Lemire's story first, and then the Clooney story, and I don't know. I think the Aaron story will look better.
Yeah.
I'd probably put Aaron's above the other one, but it's kind of close to be honest between those two.
Yeah. I mean, I liked them all. Like, it definitely. I had forgotten about the Bleeding Kansas one. Of course, I remembered the Jason Aaron one. Because that's why I bought the anthology, was to read that story. Because it's, it was at the time of Jason Aaron coming back to Vertigo after being at Marvel. Is that they had allowed him, because all of his creator-owned work was still coming out through Vertigo, that Marvel allowed him, even though he was on an exclusive, he was able to do some Vertigo stuff. So I thought that was a pretty thing. But Jeff Lemire, I'm not surprised. It did make me miss reading Jeff Lemire regularly. So I'm going to have to look up what he's been doing.
It's all creator-owned stuff he's been doing pretty much.
Yeah, but I got to go back and check that out, because it's...
We have to go back, Kate.
You do have to go back.
So that'll wrap up this issue for now, and we'll do the second half in about a month. So that's American Vampire Anthology. So I didn't rate it because it's kind of weird to rate half a book, but you got me to rank the stories instead, so I'll let that kind of filter in. Or sub in, I should say. But that'll take us out of the part of the show where we pick our favourite stuff of the week, favourite panel / moment, favourite cover, favourite art, and, well, usually top 5, but here will be a top 3. So, Matt, what's your panel / moment of the week?
So mine's gonna be, and I don't know if we talked about it, but mine's gonna be from the Doomsday special. But there's this one image of Doomsday sitting, and just staring at that door, knowing that's where he has to get out.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
it's very ominous. It's from behind him. He looks very small in comparison to this very large door, and it almost makes Doomsday seem insignificant.
I was
right?
I was looking at that page while you were talking about something during.
Yeah.
I just never brought it up. But yeah, it's a
and
good
I
page.
wanted to bring it up too, but then we got talking to the whole metaphysical aspect of heaven and hell and all this other stuff. But yeah, it's just very striking to see this Doomsday just sitting there staring off. You know, it's almost Frankenstein's monster-esque too. So, but yeah, that's mine.
Yeah, I'll also go with Doomsday Special. There's a few things I could pick. I really like where Martian Manhunter reads Kara's mind. I like the page where he sort of gets hit with fire. And I also just like the dinner or the breakfast scene between Clark and Kara. But I'll go with Jean reading Kara's mind. It's just a really nice full page spread. Great sort of, play with the art, with the fire inside her mind. That's good. Cover of the week. There's not a ton of choices. They all do have variants, at least, though. For me, it's between two Doomsday covers. There's the Puppeteer Lee card, stock variant, which is like Superman with his back to us facing down Doomsday. It's just a really nice painted looking image. But honestly, I may just go with the regular cover, which is just a very, very detailed, drawing of Doomsday. It's very, all the little ragged rock edges coming out of his body. It just looks really detailed and pretty. But for me, it's between those two for sure. What you got?
So mine's also from the Doomsday, but it's a variant, and it's the 1 in 50 John Bogdanove, and it's essentially Supergirl going up against Doomsday, but she has like a guitar, and then it says "Girl of Steel, Woman of Metal." And it's very silly.
I have no idea why this exists. Like, what about the issue led to this?
I don't know, but I love it. Again, it's very silly.
I feel
Doomsday,
like the artist watched Slumber Party Massacre 2 before he drew this and just thought, I might have her a guitar.
Yeah, the guitar's on fire. It's really going into the whole idea of calling a guitar an axe, but she's got the jacket look going for her.
It's so random.
Yep, so random.
Yes, fair enough. Fair enough. But yeah, okay. Art of the week. I mean, it's Doomsday Special, isn't it? Because it's the I think I didn't like the art in Gotham more. In Night Terror's End
mixed bag.
Does have some good art in it, but yeah, it's so all over the place that I think by default it's Doomsday Special. But I did like the art in Doomsday Special. Worth mentioning. All right, rank your 3 books, Matt.
All right, so it's going to be a Doomsday Special. It's going to be Tales of the Titans, and it's going to be Night's End.
Yeah, Doomsday Special's number 1. Number 2, I want to say Battle Lines, just because at least the concepts I think have more potential. Even though it's a real mixed bag overall. And then last place is Night's Terrors, Night's End, because so that's that over, thankfully. I will tell you now what's coming next week from DC Comics, and we're back to some regular ongoing comics, I'm happy to say. So next week we have Batman 137, we have Poison Ivy 14, we have Shazam issue 3, we have Justice Society of America, issue 6. We have The Joker, The Man Who Stopped Laughing, issue 10. We have Birds of Prey, issue 1. That's Kelly Thompson's DC entrance there. Blue Beetle, issue 1 is next week, which I guess I might give that a try. Even though I didn't read Graduation Day, which is kind of following on from. We have Peacemaker Tries Hard, issue 5. City Boy, issue 4. Steelworks, issue 4. And Fire and Ice, Welcome to Smallville, issue 1. I guess we'll be giving that a try, since... I got to know what that is. So, yeah, not a super packed week, but definitely some regular books are back and a couple of interesting ones that might be worth checking out. I mean, Birds of Prey for sure is probably the most anticipated thing I've got for next week. And also looking forward to Shazam and JSA on top of that. So
I got Ivy back, so I'm happy. Not that it really went anywhere, but I'm pretty sure Takara is back on art, so that should be good.
Yeah.
Sorry for getting distracted there. I have some news for off of when we're done recording to share with you that you'll probably be very happy with.
Okay, all right. Well, I look forward to that. By the way, whilst Matt was talking earlier, there might have been a slight noise that entered the recording briefly. I accidentally clicked on a video. I stopped it very quickly, but it was just a noise for like a second.
It's no vacuum from my wife or my cat trying to get out the door right now.
I forgot to bring it up, but I just wanted to acknowledge that it was a thing. You weren't hearing things. It was one of our videos though, so it's not like I'm worried about copyright, but...
That's very funny.
Anywho, so yeah, that's what's coming next week from DC Comics. But that has been the show. That's been episode 371 of Comics from the Multiverse. So thank you very much for joining us. There's a chance it might be a me and Connor episode next week, assuming Connor is available at any point. Otherwise, me and Matt may have to record at a weird time to do something.
Well, we'll try to figure it out.
Yes, but we'll see. Either way, there will be an episode. And thank you very much for joining us. You can, of course, support all the content over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and help keep it all coming that way. And of course, you can help for free by liking, sharing the podcast, getting us on Twitter at DC Comics Podcast. Sharing it with your comic-loving friends, I guess. But that is the show. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep reading DC Comics, and remember to never get lost in the Speed Force.